Hello, everybody. Happy New Year. Happy New Year, Aisha. How are
Happy New
you?
Year, Gwen. How are you, sweetheart? I'm good, thank you.
I'm fabulous. I've been, there's been a lot going on, and with everything else going on in the world, we thought that we would wait till this weekend because this week's been a little bit of a little hangover from 2020, but that's okay. We're fine.
2021.
Or 2021, that's right.
They're all blending into each other. That's
It's
what
like,
it is.
yes, exactly. So we're here to hopefully bring a little bit of light and levity. And the one thing that Aisha and I have done is really looked at how we're coming to just talking. We still love the just talking, but we're going to get it into a little bit more of a separation because I'm sort of the touchy-feely heart person. And my beautiful Aisha is a glorious air baby, and she's the one with the words, the one with how to think, how to express. And so that's how we're going to be taking on our topics. And of course, what better one for the beginning of 2022, but we're going to talk about letting go, right?
Yeah.
And so to start with, we're going to be starting again with the emotional aspects of letting go. Next week, we are going to be doing, Aisha's going to take the reins for the words, or how did
The
you
language of letting go.
the language. I knew that there was something. I love that, the language of letting go, because really, I'll just start off here. The whole thing about letting go, usually there's some sort of emotional carrot or stick associated with letting go. But there's also this intellectualization of letting go, that we think that we can heal our heart with our head, and we can't do that. Just a little secret. So this is why we're going to start with emotion, because we need emotion and we need language. Both of them matter.
Yeah.
We just have to be intentional for the language, but we also have to be able to sit in our heart, let our heart tell the story. Anything you'd like to add to this, Aisha?
Well, Gwen, I just wanted to say that you are the perfect, beautiful, space-giving, non-judgmental, loving space that you are for exactly this kind of thing, for the emotional aspect of it, which can be very challenging. And if you're carrying emotions for a very long time around some topics and around some people, around some situations, it can be really difficult to start even unraveling or recognizing or acknowledging what are the emotions that are there. They can run really deep. So it's also, I think, when we get into the third week of the segment, so it'll be the emotions, the language, and the practice, then we want to talk about the time that it takes, because it didn't all happen overnight. So it takes time to really work through this stuff. So I love that we've structured it this way. I think it makes it very accessible to people. And yeah, I'm looking forward to hearing how you're going to lead us through this today.
Beautiful. And just to let you know, we are here on Facebook on Sundays, 4:30. We're going to try and keep it to around 30 minutes, but we also have the Just Talking, YouTube channel. And I believe Aisha is going to also load it up on her Intentionally Design Your Life. But more about that a little bit later. We'd ask you to like, subscribe, and follow for more details on this, on following our show. And now let's get into the meat of it. So I am going to start with how my emotional processing happens, because that's where that's where I need to start to give you guys a jumping off point. So a couple of weeks ago, my sister called me in a panic that our childhood home had been bulldozed. It had been completely flattened. And it's interesting because this week I had a friend from way back in that time who is like, well, how do you feel about that? And it's like, well, I'm okay. Yet the funny thing is, Miss Processor in Dreams had a dream on Friday night that was definitely saying, you got to go by and look at that, even that piece of land. And you need to make sure that there's no pitter patter, that there's nothing left. So the great part about this for me is, intellectually, it's like, well, now that home's no longer there. So whatever emotional baggage I may have had there, may be gone from that, but that's not always the case. As we've learned with the grief recovery method, or any kind of grieving that we may have, we still need to be able to go through the process. So I've literally spent the day yesterday going to that home, or it's a hole in the ground now, and just sitting with it and looking at it and going, and then driving around the neighborhood, because I'm not going to go back there again. And I know that because I was able to follow my heart and say, okay, this is where we're going to go. So the thing is with letting go, a lot of times, especially if we are grieving something that hasn't been acknowledged, it may show up in different ways. It may show up in not sleeping well. It may show up in lack of concentration, lack of focus, things like that. And that is my trigger anyway. And I don't want to overuse the word trigger. That's how I know something's going on inside. Most importantly, when I start having dreams, especially if you're not a dreamer and you start having really specific dreams, that's your heart trying to let something out. That's your psyche. That's your body trying to let go. So as we'll get into next week, it's really important the way we talk to ourselves, because we have to be able to give ourselves permission. But the first thing that we need to do is, again, hand on heart, taking off. You know, there used to be this, the 6 hats, the people that talk about putting on the different hats. We need to take off all those responsibility hats, and we have to say, yes, but what am I feeling? If something's happened, and the reason I'm talking about my childhood home is, if there's something that happened in that home that may not be in my conscious memory, but now with this, ground being, gone over, it's a good opportunity to say, okay, is there anything left in there? Because we think, oh yeah, we grow up, time heals all wounds. One of the biggest misconceptions, when we break our arm, we don't just go, okay, I'm just gonna wait here and see what goes on. You're gonna end up with what happens is that something is gonna heal, but it's gonna heal broken. And that's really what grief is. And for any kind of emotional expression that we don't let out, it doesn't go anywhere. So it ends up just building up and building up and building up. So there's 2 sides to the emotions of letting go. First of all, we need to be able to, say this is, we want to take on a new habit. We want to be, it's the beginning of the year. We want to eat better. Well, a lot of times if we go to like a specific program, it's like, well, here's how you need to eat. Well, your eating may not be consciously available to you. It might have something to do, like, I know one of my issues with food is what happens in my fridge. If it turns to science experiments in there because I put my lettuce in there and I don't eat it for 2 weeks, then all of a sudden it's all rotty, then there can actually be a connection, an emotional connection to being grossed out by what's in my fridge. I know this sounds sort of funny, but that's how our body works. That's how our heart works. It's not, there's a part of it that's our mind, and this is what we steer, but it's also important to get into, but what do I feel about what it is that I'm letting go? And then the other side is to leave space for that to go away, and to feel whatever feels you might have for this. One of the bigger things here is that, say we do something, we do move to a new house, or, back in the day, I moved out of my home, my childhood home. So when we do that, we can be going to something better, but that doesn't mean that we're not leaving something behind. And it also doesn't allow us to be fully present now with the emotions of what we're feeling now. So it's like, here's an example. Do you ever get it where it's like, oh, the water pressure in the old place was so much better, or, this lock doesn't really work at the old place. So there's things like this that we might laugh at, and we've all had those experiences, but it's still just basically a little bit of grief. It's just a little bit of like, all those things. And just this last part to bring it home, I just saw Good Will Hunting on the other day. And Robin Williams has that great scene with Matt Damon where he talks about his wife farting, and his wife has passed from cancer. And, he goes, and this is it. And he's laughing because he goes, that's what I remember. I remember her farting in her sleep. Because the weirdest things leave an emotional impact. So we have to be able to honor all of them, including people farting in their sleep. Aisha, any thoughts on that? What are your thoughts on that?
Well, first of all, I just want to acknowledge that was a transitional thing that happened for you, your house being essentially wiped out of existence, right? So that's not a small thing. That's a foundational thing, right? Because there's so much related to where we grow up, where we spend our formative years, the experiences that we had. And so it's natural for you to have an attachment to that. And even though the grown-up self is far removed from the childhood self, there is still that connection that needs to be honored through the emotions that we feel. And I'm so glad that you had an opportunity to go by there and just be in that space, to look at that space and kind of let some of that stuff come up and be able to acknowledge it and experience it. Because a lot of times this idea of keep calm and carry on, or you're going to get through this, or like you said, time heals all wounds, doesn't allow us to really fully experience the emotions that we need to be able to go forward, right? So I think that that's really important. And even if you look at, like if you mentioned science, and I think you were tapping into something that was happening for me, which was around physics, right? Like two things can't occupy the same space at the same time,
Yeah.
right? So that's energy stuff. That's not just matter. That's actually energy stuff as well. So if you are, for example, holding an attachment or holding emotions to a particular thing, like an old house, like an old relationship, then that energy is stuck there. And unless you're able to process it and move and release it, you're not making space for new things to come in there and for the healing to happen.
Exactly. And well said, as always. Again, that reminded me, and here's the other part of it though. I did do the drive-by and I went through the old neighborhood, and it is, one way that you can tell when you've actually let go, or when you're actually in the process of letting go, or even just making that transition, is that you don't get it when you're in the middle of transformation or in the middle of a transition. You don't necessarily see what's going on. It's more like you feel that void, you feel maybe an emptiness. And if you're not accustomed to sitting in that feeling of not knowing what's going in next, not knowing what the next step is necessarily going to be, but knowing that this part is over, that's I think the biggest challenge when it comes to letting go, right? Or any kind of transition, right? Because in letting go, what we're talking about here a lot of times is usually positively stated, right? And so that is, well, why shouldn't I be able to run a marathon? Well, you can run a marathon. It's going to change your life. So you know what that means? You might not be watching as much television. You might not be having that habit of coming home and turning on the TV at 5 o'clock. And I'm just throwing these things out. One of the things that I enjoy about working out in the morning, and hopefully I can get back to, is the fact that you don't have to think. You wake up, you put on your shoes and you go out the door. You don't think, you just do. And so part of that, I have a letting go issue. I still can't let go with the fact that I used to be really fit and I used to be really disciplined. And so even the fact that I still have something where I do not embrace this, I still look at it as somehow I'm failing, instead of, you know what, that was then. I need to be okay with that. And now we're going to do it again. So you're, first of all, self-love, like really self-love, like I'm not going to beat myself up, and do the small things every day. And don't even focus on what it is that you're doing. Just focus on the feeling that you're getting. Because as you said, with the physics, you can't feel both things at the same time. But let's also add to the fact that if you feel badly or some kind of pain or dismissed emotion, that's not going to go anywhere. It's just going to go down further, right? So you got to be able to let that come out and go, yeah, but I really like sleeping in my bed, you know, and that's fun. That's also something that you're giving up. So I like sleeping in my bed. So let's go to bed a little bit earlier so that I can still get that feeling in the morning, or, you know, set my alarm for 6 o'clock and lounge around until 6:30, whatever. There's habits that we can get, but we need to be able to honor that emotion, because that emotion is going to get us moving forward to whatever it is that we're moving towards. But it's going to allow us to let go, to truly let go of things and let them go into the past when we acknowledge that, yeah, well, that's, my life's going to be different. What do you think? Thoughts?
Yeah, I think that's very, like, you've given a lot of good examples there in terms of how emotion can keep us stuck in a place, and how we can not get to the goals that we're looking for if we don't process those emotions. I think a couple of things that stood out for me in what you said were, one is around the idea of self-love, because, you know, self-love is like a lifetime of work. It's like getting to that place where, okay, you know, you like some things about yourself, you love some things about yourself, and you loathe some things about yourself. And it's really about creating and cultivating this a more gentler approach, and to really do it outside of comparison to other people. So one thing that I've done recently is I've really cut down on my social media time, because I'm finding that even as a coach, even as someone who, you know, is fairly conscious of how I feel about myself, generally, that the comparisons, it's just natural for comparisons to come up when you're scrolling down other people's pages, and they look fit, or they look happy, or they're on vacation, or what have you. And of course, you don't know the whole story. You just know what's being said there. But having that self-acceptance really starts from, first of all, normalizing who you are, making sure that you're being gentle with yourself and saying, you know what, it's okay. I'm okay where I am. You know what, if I'm not where XYZ is, or I'm not as, you know, as fit as somebody else, or I'm not as accomplished as someone else, you know, it's just being able to say, take that breath, you know, I'm okay. I'm okay. And it's okay for me to be here, you know. And that is a big part of letting go, is comparisons and and expectations and attachments to, of course. And I said this, one of the last posts that I did last year was, you know, perfection is bullshit and it is useless. And that's one, it's a big theme for me this year, is to let go of the perfection. Allow yourself to get messy, allow yourself to use words that sometimes, you know, may not follow positivity, or might not follow the, you know, the collaborative mode. But, you know, sometimes there are just things that you just need to say to people, right? And you're just going to have to say them, and they may not like it, and you may feel badly afterwards. But if something is in your head, in your throat, you need to say it to release that emotion, then you absolutely have to. And we'll talk more about that next week as well. So those are some things that came up based on what you were saying, Gwen.
Exactly. And I think that's the, you know, there's an emotional reason for us letting go, and there's an emotional reason, there's the carrot and the stick, you know, and that's the thing. We as humans, we don't like pain, but the pain still has to get really bad for us to let go of something. And even though we have the carrot, which can pull us, which is the, you know, let's move towards that, you have to get some momentum going before you can actually start focusing on where you're going.
Yeah.
And I know that I always talk about running, but it's like, you know, when you're running up a hill and you're just at the beginning and you're not really super fit, just look at your feet. Every once in a while, look up, but you don't have to be focused on the end game. You don't have to be focused on the goalposts. You just have to really be focused on where you are, and make sure that next step and that next step and what's that next step and what's that next step, especially like, you know, letting go of perfectionism is perfect, because and you know, the other thing that we've just touched on is that there's like 4 different kinds of letting go: transitional, mindset, like that we can really apply to, and that it like, it's true, like the perfectionism, it's like, I may not do it like, I may not run like Donovan Bailey or Andre DeGrasse, but you know what? I took 2 minutes off my kilometer. So my focus on what I'm doing today is not based on anybody else's agenda. It's just based on me and and really that's what awareness is all about when it comes to our emotional health, our emotional well-being. Especially I love the fact that you brought up social media. These days, everybody's frustrated. We've all, everybody's going through a tough time. Everybody is, like, everybody. So, and I find that's the hardest thing being on social media is, you don't need to have false positivity. You don't need to just go, okay, everything's unicorns and popcorn. Because you know what, this is tough for everybody. We're also in the shortest, the shortest days. It gets dark at like 4 o'clock in the afternoon, and actually it's not. It's well after 5 o'clock now. But the reality is that the main question we can be asking ourselves, and this is what we'll get into next time, but this is from an emotional standpoint: is this action that I'm doing helping me get towards my goal? And even if you can put that. Like I've got this a lip here, and I've got a whole bunch of Post-it notes, because you want to have those Post-it notes on your mirror. You want to have your Post-it notes if you're, you have your computer. You want to have it. Is this really the best use of my time? And is this healthy for me? And that's the one that I would say right now: is this healthy for me? Getting into it with somebody about maybe a difference of opinion, or somebody else wants to express something and you don't agree, or maybe there's people that even the kind of posts you want to love them from afar, right? And just say, okay, this too shall pass. And you want to be able to remind yourself that this is your time. It's your time. So you want to be able to make sure that you are putting into action things that protect your emotional health. Does that make sense?
100%, 100%. I couldn't agree with you more. And I think, what I love about what you just said is that there is, there was something that I heard about and I read about a long time ago, which is about addiction to drama. And in this, like, I've heard a couple of people that I know use this phrase doom scrolling recently, and I've done it as well, but what I'm realizing about that is that it feeds this kind of emotional catastrophizing that sometimes we do when we can't see the light at the end of the tunnel, when we feel overwhelmed by what's happening. And part of letting go is allowing ourselves to acknowledge the darkness, the sadness, the fearfulness, the uncertainty, and to let ourselves process that, because that's really very important. Like with social media, you don't really have, you almost have, I feel like sometimes you have the extremes. You have the people that are toxically positive all the time, but then you have the people that only focus on the negative things that are happening, and that they're going to post about any kind of accident or shooting or tragedy or catastrophe or anything, and that's going to come into your feed. So there is actually psychologically, in the same way that we are addicted to things like food or television or anything like that, there is also an emotional addiction to drama, and recognizing that and being able to come back to a place where you understand that, yes, there are ebbs and flows to emotion. Let me normalize that. Let me allow myself to feel pain, to feel uncertainty, to feel fear, to feel anger, to feel frustration, to be able to let myself feel that way, but not set up camp there, right? Absolutely. How do I do that? So I think that, a lot of things that happen in the world, it's hard. This is as you said, it's a difficult time for everyone. And what we want to do is we want to create a path forward that is healthy, that is accessible, that we can practice. It's a practice. It's like a meditation. It's a practice. You want to do it over and over again. You want to start small, do it with the small things. And part of it is just to even say to yourself, if you're feeling something, say, I don't like this, or I don't, this doesn't feel good to me, or I'm afraid. Like, just say it to yourself. You don't have to even say it to anybody else, just acknowledge it to yourself, so that that's part of processing, is acknowledging it and not pushing it away and not pushing it down, and just saying, I don't, I don't, this doesn't sit well with me, and I need to go do something with this. Right. So yeah, makes a lot of sense.
Agree. That's the whole thing. Awareness is the first step. Awareness. The other thing is, a lot of what grief is, unresolved emotions, right? It's over 1,000 different things. Well, right now, this week, maybe the kids aren't in school. Maybe I still have to stay home for work, so we can be grieving the fact that, you remember when we used to just get on a plane and go somewhere, and, maybe you are, maybe you aren't right now. The other thing is that the one thing about kids is that they take their go-to from their parents as well, and the adults in the room and the adults that they see. So if you're catastrophizing, I love that doom scrolling, and I'm literally getting to the point like where it's just, okay, you know what, is this a good use of my time? And I turn it off, even shows. And that's, somebody just talked about why Bridgerton was so big, because we're able to go and watch and be taken somewhere else. And this is the other thing, even the television, the things that are coming, Just Look Up is about a meteor that's going to hit the world, but it was still funny. It was looking at the absurdity. But if you're not ready to emotionally deal with that right now, like, I guess the biggest thing that I'd like to leave people with today is, are you aware of your emotional bandwidth? And where are you in that?
Yeah.
And there is no comparison, and this has nothing to do with anybody else, because here's the example. This has been a long 14 years since COVID started, or 2 years.
Did you just say 14 years?
I did.
Oh my God.
So, and that's exactly it, right? Does it feel like a long time? Yes. But if there's things that you haven't grieved from the beginning, then things that are happening now are going to go like, are you kidding me? And so if you're having that small wick, you have that small emotional bandwidth, become aware. And that's the first thing. Start shutting off anything that doesn't make you smile. If you can't smile, contact, give me a call, contact somebody, right? This is the whole thing, is that we have to be aware of our emotional bandwidth, and we need to be able to monitor that, because there's lots of people that love and care for us, and we want to love and care for them, but we need to be able to recharge our batteries. So that's the important part of letting go, because everybody let go of this. Well, let go may have a tail that goes into 12 other things that we've had in our life, right?
Yeah.
Part of my not sleeping on Friday night could have been because of this week, and it could also be because my childhood home got flattened.
Yeah. Or a combination.
That's exactly it. And so the great opportunity that this is like, okay, I can go back and clear out any garbage there. And that's exactly what I'm doing this weekend. It's like, okay, well, obviously, if something's showing up in my dreams, I'm going to deal with it now. So anyway, so I know we're at 30 minutes. It goes by quick. Yes. Yeah. So just to, for just before we get into final thoughts, I just want to let you know that Aisha's going to be offering something about a course that she has that's coming up, which is fabulous. And next week, she's going to get into how do we talk to ourselves when we're letting go? What is the language of letting go? And also for myself, if you do find that you have emotional bandwidth that's tight, if you find, again, it's incredible that the things that we do not feel do not go anywhere. Grief is it just stacks up on itself. And if we don't give it a place to get out, if you want to have a talk about that, if you're feeling like your emotional bandwidth might be tight, we're going to put a link there that you can set up a call with me as well. And Aisha, final thoughts before, and please let us know about your course as well.
Thank you. Lovely. Yes. Just to reinforce what Gwen said, it's really important to be able to do that emotional processing. She's a great coach and a wonderful listener and creates that amazing space. So for sure, if you want to take better care of yourself and you want to have a healthier way of processing your emotions, Gwen is the person to do it with. So please reach out to her. For me, I'm just starting enrollment tomorrow of the Empowered Expression program. It's a 16-week program where we talk about how you talk to yourself, to other people, what are some common places where people get stuck in their communication, why their communication doesn't result in the goals that you want for yourself. If you're feeling stuck, if you're feeling unheard, if you're feeling unappreciated, and if you really want to make some serious change, because this is not something that's a Band-Aid fix. It's not going to happen overnight. It's going to take time. It's going to take work. And I'm happy to walk with you through that. I'll be there as a partner through that healing journey with you. So please reach out to me. If you're interested, I'll be posting about that tomorrow and a link where you can get in touch with me for an enrollment call for the program. So I look forward to seeing you there. Yeah.
So next week, come and join us. The new time, 4:30 to 5. And we're going to be talking about the language of letting go. I hope there was at least a couple nuggets in today that helps you take care of your emotional bandwidth during this and any other challenging time that you may come upon. So thanks for listening to us just chatting, just talking, as we like to do.
As we like to do, yeah.
And let's see what we can do in 2022.
Yes, yeah, sounds good. Thank you so much, Gwen. Love you.
Much
Appreciate
love.
you. You're amazing.
I appreciate, and I love the hair. I love it. It's so great. So
Thank
okay.
you.
Random aside. Okay, love
Yeah.
you all. Have a great day, and we'll see you next week. Drop us
See
a
you next
line if
week.
you have any questions, comments. Just
Yes.
let us know. Okay.
And if you have any challenges around letting go, please send them to us so that we can talk about them on the show and we can give you our 2 cents worth. So please send us your comments and also your challenges so we can help.
Exactly. Thank you. Okay. Have a great week. Be good and be kind to yourself, and let your heart tell the story. Okay.
Okay.
Bye.
Bye.